end, my only friend, the end. Hello everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today's video is End, Swamp Politics, 5D Chess, and the Art of War. And, basically, obviously talking about what's happened over the last couple days. Yesterday, President Trump pretty much formally conceded and said that there will be a orderly transition of power on the 20th. And of course, there was the storming of the Capitol after the protests in D.C. on the 6th. The Georgia runoffs, right? They did the same thing they did in the national election. They just did it over again in the same fashion. And basically, the Democrats have taken control of both chambers of Congress, right? So at least we'll get legal cannabis as a green lining to our march toward full-on socialism. But in any case, it's in line with what I've been saying that, it behooves people to kind of lift their sights amidst above the immediate political situation and look at the long-term fight, because none of our lives are directly impacted by short-term political maneuverings, but over the long term, everything matters to everyone. And I figure I'll share a dream I had, not last night, but the night before. I was climbing up this very tall mountain, right? It was just this very, very sharp peak, and marching through the snows and going up, and eventually I came to a door leading into a cave in the side of the mountain. I've been watching the Hobbit remake from 2013, so perhaps that's influenced by that, but instead of a dragon, there was Mitch McConnell when the door opened. Mitch McConnell wearing a Santa hat, and basically he had a gift to offer, and it was basically a plush dong, basically a large penis, like a colored gold, it was sort of like it didn't look like a normal penis. It looked like it was like at a pointy tip. It was like a dragon penis, if you will, and it was wearing a Santa cap too. And Mitch gave me a little pep talk saying, sometimes we climb up to the top of the mountain and only to get a plush dong, and sometimes you just got to jam it in there, if you know what I mean. And I imagine that's kind of how a lot of conservatives are feeling right now, especially, those who are hoping and expecting on sort of a last-minute Hail Mary, trust the plan type scenario to play out. And, of course, hope is one thing, expectation is another. From the last few weeks, basically after the first few weeks after the election on November 3rd, I've kind of had a stoic attitude about it. Again, hope is one thing, but expectation is very different. And, expecting a victory in dire circumstances, unless you have direct control over the situation, maybe I've just lost so many different competitions and contests and different things that I've entered in the course of my life. I've become very comfortable with the aspect of losing. I don't place a lot of emotional weight in winning contests. It's not to say that I don't try and apply myself in the world. It's that I just don't try and apply myself artificially so much within the confines of, narrow contests. And, even back when I played video games, I realized, there's the best video game player in the world can turn off the machine, and what does he have? Virtually nothing, unless he spent other time outside of the video game applying those skills and developing them. And the same goes for any game or contest that mankind has created. You can be the best in the world, but when it comes to when the game stops, what do you have left? And that's where it comes down to being a well-rounded person and learning how to just win in the long game, not just the short-term game, especially not those in artificial confines. And, we can still play games. They're still fun games to play. It's still nice to win. There are prizes, there are benefits. But ultimately, the game that you should always be focused on winning is the game of life. And, being accountable to yourself always, ultimately, and not placing, external expectations on any other person, whether they be a politician or someone closer to you in your own life. But, this is, I'll do another video where I talk about, the presidency of Donald Trump, the first term, and, basically evaluating it, just like I did with Obama, giving credit where it's due, giving criticism where it's due. And I do think that it's been one of the most successful, first terms in American history, even despite the stymieing and the headwinds that he faced, given the full array of the deep state against him, not just on the other side, but within the Republican Party. From the very beginning, they were against him. Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and Mitt Romney and everybody. Ted Cruz kind of came around and realized, which way the wind was shifting and what the writing on the wall was. But the others, basically, they're within the blackmail network, right? They're part of the swamp. They are absolutely part of that, dark circle of people who, if you rat me out, I'll rat you out. And people think that Biden is like, people who are coming into a recent awakening, they think that Biden is like, the primary politician owned by China. I'm afraid that Biden is just one of many, my friends. And even McConnell himself, right? He's married to Elaine Chao, who was the first cabinet member to resign, I think yesterday or the day before, because of the unconscionable actions of telling people to protest in the Capitol. And though I will admit that, basically it was optically pretty horrible, for, the Trump kind of movement. And, basically Trump never said to break and enter into the Congress. He said to march there and to protest peacefully. People took that onto their own right, some of which were obviously paid infiltrators. Or who knows if they're paid, but they were infiltrators, and others were genuine. The woman who was shot apparently was a genuine kind of patriotic, veteran who was just there probably out of an abundance of passion about the topic and the context. But then there were people, obviously, who had sickle and hammer tattoos, and the guy with the buffalo head mask and whatnot. There were a lot of people there that have been photoed and confirmed at, BLM rallies, climate justice rallies, et cetera, et cetera. So, the thing that really is the most curious and revealing is not just that Capitol Police and the Capitol Guards opened the barrier. They were literally waving people in, right? This was a very curious event, and now the head of the Capitol Police has resigned. I think if in the article, if I read it correctly, the head of the Capitol Police was actually the one who shot the woman, Ashley Babbitt, rest her soul. Basically, when you break into the Congress, you kind of expect what you'll see. But even like, China and Russia and the rest of the world is laughing right now for the U.S. being this sort of bully pulpit championing democracy. And, what China was saying is even in the 9 months of like violent Hong Kong protests, they never actually shot somebody down. The Capitol Police couldn't hold that standard for, even, an hour. Basically just pew pew and shoot her down. It's just a total and complete joke, It's even the former heads of Capitol Police were like, "What the hell happened here? What were you doing?" And it's either, I guess both can be true at the same time to different degrees, but really exclusively either there's complete and total incompetence or there's complicitness in the actual act of breaching the Capitol. And they can be incompetent and evil, but primarily it's one or the other. And, given the video evidence, I am inclined to say that it was a deliberate event. But again, it doesn't matter what the videos show to the people who are jacked into the Matrix and only accept what the TV news tells them and what the mainstream tells them. I mean, again, to the people who actually still believe that stuff and are jacked into the Matrix, I just, within my own family, outside, I look at them as it's one flew over the cuckoo's nest, right? It's basically, they're just in a mental home, and they're just basically, treat them as you would a person in an insane asylum. Don't try to trigger them because you know what'll happen. And there's no point in arguing against somebody who's insane, right? It only proves that there's two people or more who are insane. And, ultimately, again, have those conversations with the people who are worth having conversations with, but there's no point in reasoning with people who cannot be reasoned with. And, swamp politics, right? Like, Nancy Pelosi and McConnell alike are complete and total swamp creatures, and they're not the only ones, of course, but, for a little bit of context, Nancy was born Nancy D'Alessandro, right, and her married name is Pelosi. Tommy D'Alessandro, her dad, was a total mob boss, was basically in there with, J. Edgar Hoover and, Kennedy himself, who I give credit to, JFK. His father, John Kennedy, was a bootlegger. There's just Mitch McConnell, he's married to Elaine Chao, who's basically, one of the children of a Chinese shipping magnate whose ship, the Ping Mei, back in, I believe, 2014, got caught, intercepted off the coast of Colombia with 90 pounds of cocaine. And, nothing ever came of it. It was flying the Liberian flag, which is a very strategic decision because, there's pretty much no taxation, very loose regulations when you fly the Liberian flag and run under that cover. It's you got to wonder about a shipping company that goes under the Liberian flag, whose basically daughter is a high-level American politician. She was, again, transportation secretary under Trump, who just resigned. So, in the honest criticism of Trump, to get into that a little bit, he did appoint way too many swamp creatures, trying to appease that whole regime. That was definitely one of the problems that he engaged in. He did not have enough loyalists who were willing to actually carry out his orders faithfully. He had too many people who were undermining him within his own guard, and that's just not feasible. I mean, maybe you can have a little bit of appeasement for tactical, strategic reasons, but you can't just appease for the sake of appeasement. Ask Chamberlain, how that worked out for, National Socialist Germany. Didn't really work out. You can't appease people who have their fundamental core interests geared against you. You're just basically giving them a gift for no reason, giving a gift to your enemy. And, that's why they call him Cocaine Mitch. And it's like, you'll see all these fact checkers saying, Mitch McConnell didn't own the ship, and there's no evidence that the Chow family was directly liable for the cocaine on the ship. It's like, give me a fucking break. It's like, there's a reason that people get into the shipping business, right? There's a big opportunity when you have these large ships going all over the world. The Chow family wouldn't be the first family in the world to basically, use that opportunity to transport drugs for their own financial benefit. I mean, hardly the first by any means. It's and so it begs the question of, the $25 million gift that the Chow family gave to Mitch McConnell, back in, 2011, 2012 or something, is, highly suspect of where this money's coming from. And it begs the question of how many people in our public realm got their start from, ill-gotten wealth, criminal enterprises, etc. Nancy Pelosi, mob family, has all her family wealth since taking the name Pelosi has been through a whole bunch of shady, insider trading opportunities, that, you can look up. But basically, she's had a lot of opportunities through political grift to get insider access to IPO buy-ins for different stock, including Visa and a number of different others. And she'll say, I'm defending the American people. It's like she's the big friend to big pharma and big, banks and credit card companies and all the rest that are willing to buy their way through and get the legislation that they want passed. Chuck Schumer, I don't even need to go into. He's probably the most transparently corrupt person in the entire Congress, besides Ilhan Omar, who is now introducing impeachment articles against the president. It's like, there's 2 weeks left, you morons, you nincompoops. And you can't even wait because we have to say that we impeached him twice, pretending like an impeachment removes him from office, even though he's about to already be removed from office, and you already proved that it doesn't remove a person from office just by impeaching them. These people are so stupid, but it's all for the sake of appearances, and to mask the fact that if people were to look critically at themselves, they'd find complete corruption, right? The liberals who used to be against the big corporations are now fully lock, stock, and barrel behind Nancy Pelosi. It's all complete and sick joke. And people need to recognize that it is a uniparty. It is a corruption. It spans both. And, both Biden and McConnell are completely compromised by China. McConnell has basically, for a long time, sought to soften the GOP stance against China. Make equivalence about Taiwan and not be so clear about, supporting Taiwan or coming to his aid. Even though his wife was born in Taiwan, the family is mainly from China in general. And of course China doesn't make a distinction between China and Taiwan. And, it's basically, and even Trump himself, right? Michael Cohen, who eventually turned against him, was a very shady lawyer. There's a lot of aspects, to Trump's past and of the characters he dealt with. I'm not saying that basically, Trump was an enemy of the people, but he definitely came from a world that it was rife with that same sort of corruption. And, if there was really anything, heavy on him that to be found, then I think, the Mueller investigation would have found it and they would have leveraged it against him. But, ultimately, again, it's important to recognize that, certain people on various sides understand the nature of what we're facing. This is a war. This is not a game, right? Antifa clearly understands that it's a war. They're playing 5D chess. The fact that they infiltrated that, the break-in of the Congress. I mean, if we're being honest, that's a brilliant tactical move. They've totally issued a very, very solid blow against the optics of the Trump Republican movement. It's not going to stop it, but it definitely optically was pretty bad. And, despite the people that got hurt and the optics of it, I'm not going to disavow the break into the Congress. If they're not going to disavow all of the liberal riots and murders and stabbings and shootings and all the shit that went on over the course of 2020 and, basically storming the Capitol for just during the Kavanaugh proceedings, I'm not going to disavow the break into the Congress, even if it was infiltrated. It's like stealing the podium, the Speaker of the House podium. That's hilarious, objectively. And now Chinese people are bidding on it, like, and not pulling any punches because that has historical significance, right? I mean, it's true. The U.S. has no leg to stand on by criticizing the democracies of other countries and pretending like we're this beacon on the top of a hill. It's bye-bye USA from the point of that perspective. I'm not saying that all is lost. Obviously, there's a long game to be played, and we've been in far darker points in history just in this country, not even, to look further beyond the history of this country and the countries that we came from and what the crown has done to us, in a long, long time ago. It's ultimately we still have to transcend all of those aspects and learn from the past and know where we're going to chart the course in the future, and even the cannabis aspect, understanding that hard federalism is, basically an option that states, I don't know, I doubt that California will do it for things beyond cannabis, but, a state can take a hard federalist position and rebuke the federal, will on any various number of programs if they have the political capital and will to do so, right? But that's the thing, is that most people have been somnolent. They've been sleepwalking through life and just basically either pretending that one party is good and the other's bad, or, vice versa, or that they're all bad and nothing's worth doing. Basically, if you are demoralized, the battle's already lost. That's one point that I have to keep reiterating. If you are demoralized, the battle is already lost. So you need to do whatever you need to do to stay in a good attitude and to see the long-term opportunities and benefits that are in front of us. Which there are numerous. And again, even if they push towards full-on, socialism and hyperinflationary policies, again, there's still opportunities to build wealth, to build structures of sovereignty, and to lay the groundwork for a real long-term resistance and revolution, not in the Antifa sense, but in the American Revolution 2.0 sense of returning to the founding principles of the country. I think that is very much alive and well, and I hope that more people learn from this lesson of, not expecting, Hail Mary solutions, and understanding that you need to create the narrative and create the momentum, not just in your own little tiny sphere, but to lay the groundwork outside and to perform that work. It's not enough to just be on 4chan. It's not enough to just listen to people's opinions on YouTube, or even just put your opinions out into YouTube. This is just one part and parcel of the entire scope of work which I'm engaged in every single day. And this is not anything different than what I'm putting out in terms of energetic content into the world, into my physical work, right? And again, I'll have more videos outside the cockpit of this ship soon enough, showing basically the mechanisms of sovereignty that people can take in their own lives. But, the art of war, China understands that it's a war. Antifa understands that it's a war. The Democrats who will hold on to power with their last dying breath understand that it's a war. And the Republicans, basically the establishment neocons, who will sit there and pretend like they're doing something while really doing nothing, right? They understand that it's a war. Their job is just to pretend. But again, our side in a big way still thinks it's a game. And, people need to wisen up and learn that, wars aren't won by basically going and just all out attacking on everything you have. Like, to use a historical example, even being an honest critic of my own people, right? The Celts, when they were fighting against the Romans, the Celts were very, skilled warriors and very, there were berserkers and, basically they put on their war paint and they're very skilled fighters, but they were routed by the Romans. They were defeated by the Romans. Why? Because the Romans didn't use their passion as a driving power behind their combat. They used the phalanx. They defended the person to their left and to their right, and basically they came together in these units to protect each other and to form a mechanism of defense and attack. And by that, almost the stoic warfare structures and logical warfare of the Romans defeated the passionate emotional driven warfare of the Celts. And I think that we should learn from our enemies if we want to be successful. I think that ultimately our greatest power is not our passion. Our greatest power is our logical powers of association and creation, and building, again, those phalanxes on a physical as well as a spiritual sense, of creating communities that are phalanxes, having education systems that are completely disconnected from the conventional federally funded single-payer education system, having systems of healthcare and medicine that are outside the conventional big pharma hospital system, insurance companies. We signed up for a health sharing program this year, after my whole hospitalization, realizing that, it's probably a good idea to have something like that in place. But being unwilling to actually, become part of the medical insurance racket and pay those exorbitant prices for very little in return. Basically it's a health sharing ministry. It's run by a church organization, I believe out of Ohio. And, basically it's less expensive than the comparative health insurance that I could get through my employer. The benefits are actually better. And at the same time, I know that my contributions, even if I'm not getting anything in that particular month, I'm helping people who have a spiritual foundation. And I'm helping people who I know at least have a spiritual drive, to be healthy and to, reflect the image of God. And I'm more okay paying into that system, knowing that I'm not, just paying for the opioids of some fat, dilapidated, tub of lard who's basically on his dying breath because he spent his entire life just smoking cigarettes and eating cheese puffs, right? That makes me feel better knowing, even if I'm not deriving personal benefit, that I'm helping people of like mind. This is, again, the ground level aspect of what I'm talking about on an energetic frame, right? Again, making your own colloidal silver. You don't need antibiotics. Learn how to make colloidal silver, and basically for pennies on the dollar, you can replace one entire, column of big pharma. Don't rely on the vaccine regime. Build your own immunity. Grow a garden. Go to the farmer's market. Juice, vegetables. Make a smoothie in the morning instead of, fried sausage and eggs, right? Give your body what it needs in order to actually, thrive and sustain itself. And, that is essentially what we need to actually think of in order to sustain ourselves in the long term, to fight the long battle. And that's essentially the main brunt of the message. We have to actually revitalize ourselves, revitalize our communities, bring children into this world that are prepared to inherit that battle and become basically the arrows of God, right? And to take up the arms when we start to age ourselves, right? Of course, I've still got a lot of fight left in myself, but ultimately, there will come a day when I have to give the reins to my children. And, that will happen, and I believe that I will be, well suited in that transition of power, because I know that I will train my children to inherit that and to, recognize that struggle from an early age, But, that's basically it. People just, the 5D chess entails learning that this is a spiritual war, that you need to build a phalanx of defensive and offensive structures within your own community to find that spiritual communion with your creator, as well as your community, as well as your family, so that you're not torn apart by the exigencies and the media programming of the day, right? People, my family was ripped apart because of, false idols and, just titillations and, material values over spiritual values. And I'm not going to make the same mistake. Truly, I am not. I feel very grateful that I have that understanding with Space Panther, my wife. I feel very grateful that my daughters are growing up outside of the big pharma regime and are not being vaccinated and are not being subject to the school system. And, you know, I'm fortunate enough that I've come to terms, you know, with myself, so that I can actually, you know, eschew the addictive tendencies that I've had in the past, you know, and actually continue to build, you know, where once I was just wasting energy. Because again, prepare now, son. There will be a time when we don't have the opportunities we have today, and if we don't seize the day today, we will come to that point, and we will find ourselves SOL, shit out of luck. And the same as all the other people who we've been criticizing, you know, this entire time. And I don't intend for that to be the outcome. So that's my video today. Hope you all have a good one, and we'll talk more about more uplifting things soon. But, you know, we got to learn the lessons wherever we can and play it as it lays. So that's my video today. Talk to you soon. Peace.
Ah.